What's going on, beautiful people? It's your boy Kaz Cray, the creator you require, giving you the content that you desire. And today we're doing a bit of a different video from what I usually do on this channel. We're going to be doing a rebuild in Madden NFL 2002 with the Cleveland Browns. I haven't done a rebuild on this channel in quite a long time, but with the NFL season now officially over, I want to give some different content a shot on this channel. Now, if this video does well, I'm definitely open to doing more rebuilds in different Maddens, so hit that like button if you guys enjoy this video, and let's get into it. Looking at this Browns roster, we're starting off with Tim Couch at quarterback, heading into his third season in the NFL. He wasn't really good IRL, but hopefully we'll be able to build him into a franchise quarterback here. Eric Rett's the starting running back for this Browns roster, and these running backs aren't very good at all. There's the rookie James Jackson out of Miami, but overall not a good roster at all. Mike Sellers is the starting fullback for the Browns. At receiver, it doesn't get much better. We have Kevin Johnson, who's a 75 overall. We also have Quincy Morgan, Dennis Northcutt, and Jawan Dawson. At tight end, we have Ricky Dudley and Aaron Shea, who aren't very good. This roster is really rough. Roman Obens is the starting left tackle. Jim Pines is starting left guard. At center, we have Dave Wollabaugh, who's a 75 overall. Sean O'Hara is the backup. Trey Johnson, who's a 91 overall, is really good. And then we have Ross Verba at right tackle. Then we have Keith McKenzie on the defensive side being the left end. Courtney Brown, the former #1 overall pick, is right end. Then we have Orpheus Roy, Gerard Warren, just to name a few of the D tackles. And we have Dwayne Rudd, who's pretty good at 86 overall. Wally Rayner is the 80 overall middle linebacker. And then Jameer Miller is the starting right outside linebacker at 84 overall. Dalen McCutcheon is the best corner we have at 72 overall. So our linebacking core is pretty good, but our secondary not so much. Percy Ellsworth is the starting free safety. Marcus Smith's the starting strong safety. Then we have Phil Dawson at kicker and Chris Gardocki as our punter. So now we're going to simulate the first season. I'm not expecting a whole lot from this Browns roster, to be completely honest. And sure enough, we end up finishing 7-9, which is actually a little bit better than I thought the Browns would be in this first season. But we had some tough losses early on in the season. We did end up beating the Ravens, however, which is pretty big. And overall, just a rough first season. We did go 7-9, which is pretty good. The Chiefs ended up winning the AFC at 11-5. Then we have the Jets, Ravens, Titans, Broncos, and Bills making the playoffs, with the Colts just barely missing out, as well as the Chargers, Raiders, and Seahawks. So we were just a couple games behind the final wildcard spot. In the NFC, the Rams went 12-4. This is the greatest show on turf era. The Lions surprisingly went 11-5 and won their division. Bucks went 10-6, Vikings 10-6. Eagles won their division. The Falcons backdoored in at 9-7. Tim Couch didn't have a great first season in this series. He had 21 touchdowns, 17 picks, 3,357 passing yards, and a 53% completion percentage. On the ground, Eric Rett led the team with 759 yards and 5 touchdowns, so not great stats on the ground. Prentice had about 500 yards, and then Tim Couch had 9 fumbles. Good lord. Kevin Johnson was a Pro Bowler, actually. 90 catches, 1,266 yards, and 11 touchdowns. So he really carried the load for the receiving core. And Ross Verba only gave up 7 sacks, which is pretty good. Can't complain too much about that, although Pine and Johnson gave up 13 sacks each. Wally Rayner had 115 tackles, 14 tackles for a loss, and 9 sacks. Rudd and Miller each had 8 sacks each. Miller also added 3 interceptions as well. And Miller actually ended up making the Pro Bowl for us, so it's good to see we have a defensive player making the Pro Bowl that we could possibly build around in the future. And Dalen McCutcheon led the team with 17 pass deflections. Miller and Roy each had 2 forced fumbles. So this was a pretty solid season defensively, even though we went 7-9. And hopefully we can build off that and build this defense into a contender moving forward. And Phil Dawson had a really bad year. He missed 12 field goals. Didn't miss any extra points at least, but sheesh, he was not very good, to say the very least. And then punting wise, Chris Gardocki averaged 45.1 yards per punt, 36.2 net average, and he was a Pro Bowler. And then Jamel White had 2 kick return touchdowns, so looks like we have our kick returner of the future. Kevin Johnson wasn't too spectacular as far as returning kicks. And we get a Jets-Rams Super Bowl, as Kevin Johnson was one of our lone Pro Bowlers. He was one of 2 guys, Jameer Miller being the other. And the Jets blow out the Rams 43-17 to win the Super Bowl. We didn't have any players retire in this first offseason, which is good. We don't have a whole lot of old players. The Browns were a relatively new quote-unquote team. So now we go to re-signing players, and we're going to bring back Jamel White to return some more kicks for us. He's not going to cost a whole lot. Then Jim Pine I thought about bringing back, but you know, you give up 13 sacks and you're heading towards the twilight of your career. I don't think I'm going to bring you back. And Trey Johnson, even at 91 overall, I don't feel like I should bring him back after he gave up 13 sacks at right guard. Wally Rayner, I'm absolutely bringing back for 3 years though. 3 years, 2.3 mil per year. Definitely got to bring him back. And then outside of that, I didn't really decide to bring anybody back. So with this being the year before the Texans came to the league, you're actually allowed to make players available for the expansion draft, but I'm not really going to talk about any of these guys because none of them are really that consequential when it comes to our overall roster. So let's just go to free agency now. First guy we're going to look at is Larry Atkins, who is coming from the Chiefs. We could definitely use a lot of help at safety, so I'm going to offer him 3 years worth $650K per year. And I decided to try to bring in Terry Cousin as well to help out the corner situation. I also decided to sign the former Titan Kevin Dyson, and I just brought on Michael Bishop for a little bit of QB depth. At left guard, I decided to go after Doug Brzezinski to help the offensive line get a little bit better. He's 25 years old, 77 overall, so it's absolutely somebody that we could definitely use to help the O-line out. So after simming the first day of free agency, we unfortunately have to battle for Kevin Dyson and Atkins as well. The Texans are looking to get Atkins, and as a Titans fan, I just can't let that slide, so I offer him a new deal. I also decided to go after David Akers to replace Phil Dawson, and we end up getting Atkins and Dyson. I did offer Atkins another deal off screen, and then I ended up signing Akers, Brzezinski, Cousin, and Bishop as well. So now we go into our first draft of the rebuild, and the first guy I'm looking at is London Alderman, who I decide to draft. He's an 80 overall safety, so starting to build up this defense a little bit. We also go after Luther White, who has 99 tackling and 96 strength. I'm definitely trying to pick him up, even though he's a Florida Gator. He's 84 overall, so definitely somebody we could use. Also decided to go after Josh Davis, who has 89 pass blocking, 82 run blocking, and 88 strength. We could definitely use him to bolster this pass blocking, because we got to keep Tim Couch up. We also go after Rob Newton, who's a 98 speed receiver. That could be very useful, although that 54 catching scares me just a little bit, but not enough to not draft him, so we bring him in. In the 5th round, we go after Tremaine Hedgie, who has 68 strength, and overall isn't great at anything outside of run blocking, but even at 64, that's not great. But at this point, we're kind of just drafting anybody we can really get our hands on. We also go after Anthony Manning. The speed's not great, but the acceleration and agility and the carrying is good enough to justify bringing him in, especially with how weak our running game is. So Anthony Manning is who I decided to draft in the 6th round, and in the 7th round, I decided that we are going to go after Steven Robbins, 85 strength, 78 run blocking, and 72 pass blocking. That's not great, but it's really good for the 7th round of the NFL draft. So now just a quick overview of the roster. We still have Tim Couch at quarterback. Anthony Manning will be our starting running back. We still have Mike Sellers. Kevin Dyson will be our number 2 receiver behind Kevin Johnson. Ricky Dudley's our starting tight end. Roman Oben's left tackle. Brzezinski's the left guard. Wollabaugh is still the center. And then Davis is actually our right guard now. And overall, Luther White's going to be starting over Orpheus Roy now. And with him and Warren in the middle, we should definitely cause some damage. We still have our linebacking core. Terry Cousins our top corner, although our corner situation is even worse than it was last year. Alderman is starting the free safety. Atkins is starting strong safety. Akers is the kicker, and Gardocki is still our punter. So now we head into year number 2, and we actually made it to the playoffs at 9-7. We lost our first 2 games of the season, but then we bounced back, won 2 more, then lost to Tampa. Then we beat Pittsburgh to get to 3-3, lost to Cincy, beat the Colts, lost to the Bills and the Saints and Bengals, and then towards the end of the season, we went on a bit of a run to backdoor into the playoffs, winning our final 5 games of the season, going from 4-7 to 9-7, and we get the top wildcard spot just over Jacksonville. So overall, kind of lucked out just because of the rest of the AFC was really putrid, and Seattle ends up winning the NFC. In their first year in the NFC, the Colts won the AFC, as you guys probably saw, and we're in the playoffs now. After not making it last year, we get to the playoffs in year 2. So I'm liking the prospects of us being a playoff team in every year from here on out. Looking at the stats, Tim Couch nearly had 4,000 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, and just 11 picks. So definitely a big improvement over last season. 59% completion percentage as well. And this is the best season he's had so far in his career. So hopefully it goes up from here, but who knows, honestly. The running game didn't do a whole lot better than it did last year. Anthony Manning had 640 yards and 9 touchdowns. But the carries were pretty split like they were last season between Manning, Prentice, and Sellers. Kevin Dyson and Kevin Johnson both had over 1,000 yards. Dyson had 10 touchdowns. But somehow Kevin Johnson's the one who got into the Pro Bowl and not Dyson. Ricky Dudley had 6 touchdowns. Dyson had 6 drops, so maybe that's why he didn't make it to the Pro Bowl. But honestly, he still should have made it. Wolaba had 68 pancakes to 10 sacks given up. Davis had 15 sacks given up. But Verba, Brzezinski, and Oben did pretty good protecting Couch this year. Hopefully that continues into year 3 and beyond. Wally Rayner had 112 tackles. 6 tackles were lost and 8 sacks this year. Dwayne Rudd had 100 tackles. 6 tackles for a loss and 5 sacks. Courtney Brown had 10 tackles for a loss and 10 sacks this year. So he definitely had a big year, making it to the Pro Bowl as well. So he's already having a better career than he did IRL, which I can't complain too much about. Corey Fuller had 3 picks. London Alderman had 2 picks, and he makes it to the Pro Bowl as a rookie. So congratulations to him. That's pretty big. No Pro Bowl for Miller this year, but he still had a pretty solid season. And then Brown also had 4 forced fumbles, 3 for Rudd. So already in year 2, the defense looks like it's coming along very well. And hopefully they're able to sustain that, because defense wins championships, as they say. Alderman and Atkins each had a block, and we had 2 touchdowns for Fuller, 1 for Rayner defensively. David Akers didn't do too much better than Dawson did. He missed 11 field goals this year, which is really uncharacteristic for David Akers, especially with how high his overall is. He also missed 2 extra points as well. Neither of them were blocked, so yikes. That's all I can say. Chris Gardocki didn't make it to the Pro Bowl this year, but he still had a solid season punting the football, just a little worse than last year. And this year, White has no kick returns for touchdowns, so it's pretty disappointing. But now we look at the Pro Bowlers. Kevin Johnson made it to the Pro Bowl, as you can see. Another great season for him. I still think Dyson should have got in there as well, but I can't complain too much about Johnson making it. Courtney Brown also made it to the Pro Bowl, as you guys saw, as he had a breakout season. Hopefully there's more where that came from for him. And then London Alderman, like I mentioned, also made it to the Pro Bowl with 73 tackles and 2 picks. And yearly award-wise, Courtney Brown finishes 4th in best D-line. We didn't have any award winners or placers last year. That's why I didn't show them in the first year. But now we go to the playoffs, and we sim the first game, and we knock off the Dolphins 17-10. So now we go to the divisional round, taking on the 2-seeded Oakland Raiders. Yep, Oakland, not Las Vegas. And we're going to sim this game, and we win 28-21. So we're going to the AFC Championship game. And we're going to be taking on the dreaded Jacksonville Jaguars, who knocked off the Colts in the divisional round. So we have a bit of an easier matchup this time around, and we end up beating the hell out of the Jaguars 49-19. I'm not complaining about that. And we're going to be taking on the Seattle Seahawks, the top seed in the NFC, in the Super Bowl. We made it to the Super Bowl the second year of the rebuild. I love this. And we end up beating the Seahawks 20-17 in the Super Bowl. So I have taken the Browns to the Super Bowl and won it with them. And the best part of all is we had nobody retire, so we're going to bring back all of our key players. So maybe we can run it back in year 3 and even go on a three-peat. So as far as free signings go this time around, there wasn't really anybody I felt like bringing back, so I released everybody. And then I decided to trade Dave Wollabaugh to the Atlanta Falcons, and this is how the deal ended up looking. We are going to get a 3rd, 5th, and 6th round pick in exchange for him. And I also decided to trade Orpheus Roy with Luther White and Gerard Warren being in the middle. We no longer need him, so we trade him over to the Cowboys with a 6th and 7th for a 4th and a 3rd. So now we go to free agent signing, and the first free agent we're going after is Dre Bly, as you saw there. And to replace Wollabaugh, we go after Brian Winters. We also decided to bring in the former Patriot Willie McGinnis. However, the Texans decided to try to snipe Bly from us, but we're not letting the Texans prosper here. Not at all. And then the Lions try to get McGinnis from us instead. But we end up signing Bly, but then the Texans are trying to snipe McGinnis from us as well. So the Texans really are just trying to come for us here. But I'm not going to let that slide. And we end up signing McGinnis, Bly, and Waters eventually as well. So we didn't do a whole lot in free agency this year, but, you know, with how good the team was and with how few losses we really had in re-signing, didn't really matter. We ended up drafting Marty Holmes, the corner, to help out Bly and Cousin a little bit because we definitely need some corner depth. And I also go after Traveris Walsh, who is a 94 speed, 83 acceleration, and he's a 73 overall player, and we could definitely use some receiving help with Johnson and Dyson doing so well. I also decided to go after Dedrick Potts, who has pretty good blocking stats at least. 64 overall, so not a great player, but we definitely need some center help. I decided to go after Andrew Ward in the 3rd round as well, picking him with the 7th pick in the 3rd round. Then we also go after Deion Charles in the 3rd round, the final pick of the 3rd round, to help out our tight end depth. Go after Ted Whitfield in the 4th round to get some more O-line depth as well. Marco Smith is who we're going to pick up at D tackle late in the 4th round. These picks just aren't really as good as our first draft was overall, as we look at Ray Marshall and pick him up as well for some more linebacker insurance. And then Joseph Jenkins is who we're going to look at here at the end of the 5th round, 65 overall player. And it's not really getting much better from here. And to try to get a better running back, we get the 98 overall Abrams there. So now looking at the quarterback situation, Prentice was initially going to be the starter, but I put Manning back up there. Now they have Walsh as the top receiver, which I'm not rocking with. Dyson and Johnson are going to go in front of him. I mean, they're just trying to put all the rookies in for some reason, but just pause to look at our depth chart if you need to. I know it's going about really quickly. Definitely got to get Willie McGinnis starting in there for sure, but Courtney Brown is going to be the starting right end once again. But then we got Bly, Holmes, and Cousin as our top 3 corners. So our corner situation is a lot better than it was in the past at very least. And we'll just have to see how it goes. And it did not go well in year 3. We went 5-11. So the year after winning the Super Bowl, we are one of the worst teams in the AFC. We started off well beating the Bengals, but then we went on a long losing streak, losing 6, 7, 8 games in a row before finally beating the Jets. But then it just didn't get a whole lot better from there as we lost a bunch of games. It's just a rough season right after winning the Super Bowl. The Colts, once again, are the top seed in the AFC. The Raiders going 2nd, Jets 3rd, Ravens 4th, Chargers 5th, and Chiefs 6th. So Jacksonville misses out on the playoffs just barely. Haha. Philly ends up getting the top seed in the NFC, and the Seahawks also missed the playoffs. So both Super Bowl teams end up missing the playoffs, so we'll have 2 new teams in the Super Bowl this year, both out of the AFC and the NFC. Tim Couch kind of fell back to earth a little bit, 27 touchdowns, 18 picks, 4,107 yards as well, and 58% completion percentage, so his numbers are a little bit down from last year. Anthony Manning didn't do too much better this year, 3.8 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns, 645 yards on 166 carries, and I mean, maybe it's just because they're splitting all these carries, but our running game just hasn't been great. Kevin Johnson had another great season, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 72 catches. Kevin Dyson had a drop-off as well, 917 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 65 catches. And then Traveris Walsh, 4 touchdowns, just under 600 yards on about 34 catches. And our O-line was definitely not as good as it was last year. Maybe Wollabaugh being gone definitely hurt that. Wally Rayner had over 100 tackles once again. Courtney Brown, 11 tackles for a loss and 9 sacks, both leading the team. And he didn't make the Pro Bowl this year, unfortunately. Dre Bly had 5 picks. Jameer Miller had 4. So our interceptions are going up at very least. But as a whole, just seems like a big drop-off from last season defensively as well. which isn't very good to say the very least. David Akers missed 7 field goals this year. His percentage went up a little bit, but he still missed extra points as well. So not very good. Gardaki had another solid season for us for the most part. And no kick return nor punt return touchdowns for Abrams. And then also we did not have a single Pro Bowler in year 3 of this rebuild. So we're taking a step backwards after winning the Super Bowl. And the Eagles end up beating the Colts 21-17. And just so you guys know, while I'm recording this, I have not watched the Super Bowl yet. The Super Bowl hasn't happened yet. So maybe this is a good omen for the Eagles. I guess we'll find out when this video drops, huh? But once again, nobody on the team retired. So now we have 2 holdout players. Doug Brzezinski and Kevin Johnson are both holding out of their contracts, which isn't ideal to say the very least. But we are going to try to offer Kevin Johnson a deal. And I'm going to tell you guys ahead of time, I totally forgot to trade Brzezinski. I was going to trade him initially, but I didn't end up trading him. So just a little spoiler for the rest of the video. Travis Prentice is our highest overall running back, but he hasn't really done anything to justify another contract. But Kevin Johnson certainly has, so he's going to get a new deal. 3 years, $3.2 million per year. Ricky Dudley put up really good numbers, so I think it's only right that I sign him to at least a 1-year deal. Roman Oben has had a solid career with us so far, so even at 30 years old, we'll give him a 1-year deal. Brzezinski gave up 12 sacks last season, so I don't really feel like I should give him another contract, which is why I didn't. And then Jameer Miller has had a bit of a drop-off, even with 4 picks, so I'm not going to bring him back. But Chris Gardaki is going to come back on a 1-year deal, and everybody else is getting released. Miller's just getting too old for me to really justify bringing him back. So, kind of a weak free agency this year. We go after Cecil Martin, the fullback, to replace Mike Sellers. And then we go after Barry Gardner. Now, don't ask. I don't know why I didn't go after Junior Seau. I probably should have, but I didn't. So, whoopsie. To replace Brzezinski, we go after Otis Clay with the 3rd overall pick. He ends up being an 81 overall. I mean, you can already see the overall, so he didn't end up. Like, we knew what we were getting. Hilliard is another guy I got in the 2nd round. He is a 72 overall right end. Mo Bennett is who I end up picking at free safety. I just really am not liking what I'm getting from Atkins at this point, so I'm going to get a replacement for him. Rory Bennett, the hard-hitting cornerback, is who I pick in the 4th round. He's a 66 overall. And then we go after a strong safety as well in Vanelli. Then in the 6th round, we go after Damon Langham, who has really good speed and agility, but his catching is really subpar. But maybe he'll just be a kick returner for us. And then with our final pick, we go after the tight end Walker, who's a 63 overall. We just wanted to go for the best player available at that point. So they got Walsh starting over Johnson and Dyson. Dyson's now the 4th string receiver. I don't know how I feel about that. But this is the rest of the roster. Brzezinski is still holding out, and again, I didn't re-sign him. I forgot to trade or re-sign him, so we're kind of just stuck with him being a backup now, which isn't ideal, but it is what it is, you know. This is my first rebuild in quite some time. I actually did this rebuild like a while ago, so this isn't like really new, but I just figured I'd get this video out for you guys, you know. But that's the squad. And we'll see if we do any better. To get another outside linebacker on the roster, we get Peter Sermon, and we go 8-8, and we just barely miss out on the playoffs once again. We started 1-4, and honestly, just wasn't a great start for us. We went on a 3-game winning streak, however, but just kept trading wins and losses. And by the time we got to the end of the season, it was just too late to really salvage the year. So we miss out on the playoffs by just a game. The Titans actually end up being the top seed in the AFC. We end up being tied with a bunch of teams with an 8-8 record, and the Texans finish 6-10. The Vikings go 12-4. They still have Randy Moss and Dante Culpepper at this point. Don't think they have Chris Carter. I might be wrong about that, but they end up being the top seed in the NFC. So good on them. And Tim Couch actually had an even better season than he did 2 seasons ago. 30 touchdowns, 10 picks, 3,700 passing yards. Definitely developing into a franchise quarterback for us, and a 61% completion percentage as well. So definitely much better from Couch. Anthony Manning ends up having over 800 yards on the ground, and he had 6 touchdowns. So he's getting better every season. James Jackson had over 400 yards. Kevin Johnson with another 1,000-yard season, 9 touchdowns and 67 receptions for him. Traveris Walsh, just under 900 yards, 5 touchdowns, 65 catches for him. Kevin Dyson ended up being buried on the depth chart, as you guys probably saw, so he definitely didn't place very high in receiving yards or receptions, as you see there. And then Dedrick Potts only gave up 5 sacks starting at center. Verba gave up 13, Clay gave up 10. Overall, the O-line did a lot better. Wally Rayner led the team in tackles once again, also led the team in tackles for a loss and sacks. Courtney Brown had a huge drop-off, having 3 sacks after having 10 last season. So, not an ideal season for him. But Marty Holmes had 5 picks, Dre Bly had 5, Alderman had 3. So, we're getting up there in interceptions at very least. But still, it's just very disappointing to see how well the team did in year 2, winning the Super Bowl, and now having back-to-back seasons of not making it to the playoffs. And David Akers has just been a complete bust since we've signed him to the team. Gardocki had another solid season for that time period, I guess. This year, we actually did have a Pro Bowler in Dre Bly, the cornerback, but that was our only Pro Bowler on the team, unfortunately. And the Titans made it to the Super Bowl, but they lost. Sad face. The Vikings won 24-21, so I'm sure Mr. Hurricane is very happy about that, but I'm not. But I am happy that we once again don't have any players retiring, so we get another season of no retirements, and this is like the final offseason as well. James Jackson, I end up giving a 2-year deal to because he's doing so well as the backup running back. Anthony Manning is going to be our starting running back for 3 years as well. Kevin Dyson, I decided to let go. Josh Davis, I actually give a 3-year deal to since Brzezinski's leaving. And then Wally Rayner, I'm definitely bringing back. He's been the heart and soul of this defense. And then London Alderman, who's now an 89 overall, is getting re-signed. Everybody else can hit the bricks pretty much. So Akers is now a free agent. So I decided to go after Martin Gramatica to be our new kicker. Also decided to bring in Ron Dane to help out this running game. And I also bring in Chris Chambers to replace Kevin Dyson. And I also offer Frank Wycheck a deal as well to help our tight end situation. We're just going gung-ho here. I cut Willie McGinnis, and I signed Chris Williams as well. Like, I'm not playing this year. I'm trying to win a Super Bowl. I also bring my boy Keith Bullock onto the team as well. And Andy London will replace Chris Gardocki on the roster. The Dolphins tried to snipe Wycheck for me, but I wasn't going to let that happen. And I end up signing pretty much everybody. Keith Bullock almost gets sniped by the Jags, but I'll be damned if I let him go to Jacksonville after all those years in Tennessee. So now our final year, our final draft, we go with Farmer in the first round. Then we also go after Alonzo Dishman, who's very athletic. Had to bring him onto the team. Left end, we go after Tubbs, bring him in. Then Marty Chang, the left tackle, with 96 strength, I bring him in. A.J. Connor, the center, I bring in for some center depth, just because we need another center. And then we just simulate the rest of the draft from there, just because I'm not really concerned with the draft. We already got the players that I feel like will do the best on this team. And hopefully this leads to another playoff run, maybe even a Super Bowl. It's the final year of the rebuild, and hopefully we're able to get things done here. But this is probably our strongest roster on paper that we've had in this rebuild. So, Madden, don't fail me now. That's all I can really say. Madden, do not fail me now. Well, we went 9-7 in our final year of the rebuild, which was the same exact record that we had the year we won the Super Bowl. It was an up and down season. We went on a few winning streaks here and there, but then we went on a big losing streak mid-season. Went on another winning streak, but then we lost the final game of the season. So, with that being said, did we make it to the playoffs? No, we did not. We finished just short of winning the division. All we would have had to do is beat the Broncos, who didn't even end up making it to the playoffs themselves, and we would have won the division. But alas, with that final loss, we end up missing out on the playoffs 4 of the 5 years in this rebuild. We won the Super Bowl in year 2, but still was a disappointing season. Traveris Walsh ends up being one of the Pro Bowlers on this team that we had. He also finished second in best receiver right behind Torrey Holt, but ahead of Isaac Bruce, Marvin Harrison, and Freddie Mitchell, just to name a few. And Martin Gramatica Only missed 3 field goals this season, so I wish we would have had him for the other seasons. But he finishes 4th with best kicker. And then looking at the stats, Tim Couch had his best season yet. 35 touchdowns and 6 picks, 3,700 passing yards, and just a great season from 63% completion percentage as well. Ron Dane had a huge season, over 1,700 yards, 16 touchdowns, and no fumbles as well. Anthony Manning had his worst season with us, but he also didn't get a ton of carries because Dane was the main guy running the football. Receiving-wise, Traveris Walsh had just short of 1,200 yards receiving, 15 touchdowns. Frank Wycheck went to the Pro Bowl as well. I forgot to mention. Just under 800 yards and 10 touchdowns. Kevin Johnson had his worst season with this team. Our O-line did pretty well. Potts had 75 pancakes to 10 sacks given up. Rayner once again leads the team in tackles with 98. Rayner had 9 sacks as well. Luther White had 8. Courtney Brown with another really disappointing season. Dre Bly had 7 picks. I don't know how he didn't make it to the Pro Bowl. And Holmes had 12 pass deflections. Bullock had 9 of them. So we brought in a lot of good players to make one last shot at making it to the playoffs, but unfortunately we just barely missed out. And again, Grammatica only missed 3 field goals this year. No extra points missed for him. So overall a good season. London did about as well as Gardaki had been doing, and then we had no kick return touchdowns. And in the final Super Bowl, it is the Chargers blowing out the Saints 34-13. I hope you guys enjoyed this rebuild, and once again, if you guys want to see more rebuilds on this channel, make sure you guys run that like button up, and that way I'll know to do more of them. Madden 2003 will be the next one if you guys do want to see more of these from the channel. But if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys hit that like button, hit the sub button if you're new as well. Turn your notifications on to join the notification gang. That way, every time I upload a video, you guys will be notified. And we're going to keep this mofo rolling here on Cast Cray Gaming. If you guys want to see more from the channel, check out the playlist and the video in front of you.